Do you know what a non-traditional career is? A non-traditional career is any one in which a single gender represents less than 25% of the total number of workers. There are non-traditional careers for both men and women. Here are some examples, though this is not an exhaustive list. Women are underrepresented in engineering, auto mechanics, electricians, computer scientists, law enforcement, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, fire management, construction management, culinary arts, and welding. Men are underrepresented in massage therapy, nursing, early childhood education, cosmetology, dental hygienists, and bookkeeping. One of the root causes for why people don't pursue and persist in non traditional pathways is a lack of role models. This is related to self efficacy, the belief one has in their ability to complete a task. One of the sources of self efficacy is vicarious experiences or the observation of models. Seeing someone perform a task or meeting someone who looks like them, who's in a career or pathway, can over time increase someone's belief that they can do a task and increase a sense of belonging. In this series, I interview people who have pursued careers in non traditional pathways. I hope that you will be inspired by their stories. All right, Jennifer, hi, welcome. Thank you so much for talking to me today. Today we have Jennifer Alviso. She's going to talk to us about her career in engineering, and I'm grateful that you've taken time to join us. So start us off, Jennifer. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career in engineering.
I went to engineering school, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and that's sort of central California, and then made my way up to the Bay Area in San Francisco, where I worked a little bit as an engineer, and then for a few years, and then I left also for a couple of years, and then came back into engineering. And I'm working for a small firm where we work on kind of custom homes, large custom homes. Um, and yeah, that's my journey into engineering.
Great. So describe for us a typical day or a typical week in the life of your career.
Um, Typically, actually, so when we're actually hiring new engineers right now, and they can be dropped in pretty quickly into any point in the project. So, a typical project cycle is, we have a kickoff meeting with the architect, and then, we develop drawings to go into permit. And then, once that's approved, we go into construction. And, those are sort of three different points. And on any given day, I feel like I could be, meeting with the architect on one project and then in construction on another project. So it varies day to day, and but it's pretty nice, being involved in all aspects of a building project, and then also, uh, you know, solving problems, in terms of like how things are framed, and then one day seeing everything like built, and driving past that building one day and saying, "Oh, I worked on that." So I definitely have a lot of pride and uh, you know a, a lot of satisfaction in seeing something that I've worked on. hmm
So, what made you decide to become an engineer, and how did you select your specific discipline of engineering?
I have an aunt that was an architect, and she sort of you know exposed me just to the industry in general. And I think as a kid, and then as I was growing up, I sort of started to notice like, oh, I really gravitate towards my art classes. I definitely enjoy like math and science classes. And then I think actually I was thinking of doing architecture at first, but at some point I realized like, oh, I think I'm more involved in the science behind how buildings are put together. Um, so I decided to choose a career path in engineering. When I found out uh, and that there is an engineering discipline, and then went into that, and then chose uh, the civil engineering department because that's really what kind of targets you towards buildings or structures. Hmm.
So, what are some of the other careers that, maybe, engineering is sort of a terminal point in that. And you talked about that you're connected to architecture, but from a technical college setting, are there other careers of people who are in your business, like maybe CAD draw, people who draw CADs and any kind of graphics? What are some of those opportunities for people in your field, but may not require a 4-year degree plus master's or whatever?
Yeah, I think there are drafting um, disciplines, but it's not just drafting. I think it's also modeling. Like, actually, for our company, we do a lot of in-house drafting, so that is a skill that we have. But we also, need a lot of help doing that as well. So we're actually trying to hire a drafter right now. Just somebody to help produce drawings. So that's one component, and there's also just construction in general. I feel like uh, related to that, you can meet a lot of people, and so you can get into the construction side, you can get into the relationship side, kind of talking about projects and building them, and you know kind of the funding of a project. And then yeah, definitely drafting is a huge you know help for, because that is what the documentation that we give, both to the building department and also to the contractor, to uh, it's sort of the template of like how to build this building.
So, as you know, women are underrepresented in engineering and drafting, and also in construction management. How often do you get to work with women who are in those fields through your company, or maybe in other points in your career?
I think it's definitely grown a lot more like over the years. I think when I first started, and I think also it depends on which discipline of engineering that you go into. Um, so I have had classes where I was, almost either the only girl in the class, or, uh, you know, maybe just one of a few. But over the years, I feel like it's grown. I think during the times where I was the only person there, it was definitely a little lonely, but I think my enjoyment of those classes, or the things that I was learning, didn't really deter me. But it definitely uh, feels a little lonely at first. But I think, one way that I was able to kind of overcome that is like you just make friends with the people who are in the class. So, there isn't this thing where just because they're guys that that there's this barrier of like I can't speak to them. So I think it definitely actually help encourage me to sort of break out of my shyness cycle, and just yeah, make friends. And definitely, once I started working with them, everything just got much more productive. Like we encourage each other, we learn from each other. Yeah. So
So I'm curious, one of the predictors of women entering into and staying in male dominated fields is if they had experiences growing up in male dominated spaces. And I think I remember you telling me that you're an athlete and that you're a runner. So did you have any experiences growing up before college where you were accustomed to being, one of the only women?
not so much
Okay.
in college. I think, like I said, civil engineering, I think it's it's not quite 50-50, but I feel like uh there were more women in our department than there were in some of the other departments.
Mm-hmm.
I knew other classmates where they were the only girl in their class, but luckily, uh, we're still a college of engineering, so there's a lot of crossover between our disciplines, and still a lot of help that we can offer each other.
Sure.
Um,
So
but
so I mean, in general, civil engineering, I don't have all the numbers memorized. I do know for engineering as a whole, women represent, like, depending on who's doing the data, 13 to just shy of 15%. And I didn't realize if civil was higher, but I'm interested in this notion of Cal Poly having almost 50-50 female male students. Is that what you were saying?
uh, it's just when I look, I don't know the actual numbers,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
feel like when I would look across, like my my roommate was in mechanical engineering, and she was like, one of like just a few people in her class at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then it did seem like, oh, some of my other classmates, maybe, yeah, it just seemed like there were more women in our classrooms than there were in some of the other classrooms. Although
Interesting.
I do notice, like, even in civil engineering, like once you start to divide it into the individual disciplines within civil, you start to also see a breakdown of, like,
Okay.
where I might be one of three women in the class. And then, yeah, so maybe it's more like the male students in the classroom or in the same college are sort of in different areas, but it I think over time you sort of get used to being in that space where you're one of a few, and then it just sort of feels normal. And maybe that's just me sort of not remembering totally
Yeah, no, I mean,
right.
that's what happens, right? Like, you can become accustomed to the culture, and it no longer feels foreign. So I want to shift here. So you talked about your aunt being an architect. So she was clearly an influence and perhaps a role model for you. Were there other examples of people, men or women, who were in the field of civil engineering that either from high school, college, or in your career, that you've looked up to as role models, or maybe you sought out to be your mentors? So just talk about a little bit about the importance of role models and mentors.
Definitely, I feel like role models are a big thing. I feel like even now, I was saying that there are women in the field, but I don't think a lot of them typically end up in, at the principal or, like, higher levels of engineering. We're still sort of in the sort of staff engineering side. And I definitely look up to a lot of the other women that are in those positions, and uh, I think it's definitely inspiring to see them, and sort of, if I ever wanted to go in that direction, I feel like they are somebody to reach out to and figure out, how was their career path and what kind of led them to that. And I do feel like even now that, you can be working and it's sometimes hard to be noticed. And I'm not really sure, if it's specifically because I'm a woman and, they just don't see that in me. Um uh but I feel like we're working through that as an industry and trying to make changes. So I'm hopeful for the future that, you know that we will come to a point where, we will see more of a 50-50 in the engineering field itself, and then also, at in the management level or principal level.
Great. So I'm curious, do you have an example of a mentor that you have that you sought out and said, "Hey, would you mentor me?" And describe, if you have that, describe a little bit of how that relationship has helped you move through, advance, or be more successful in your career.
I think I haven't had like I didn't have a woman mentor.
It doesn't have to be
um
a woman, just in general,
yeah,
like the point of just seeking out help and guidance
yeah,
and And because the goal is I'm trying to teach students and anyone to learn how to seek out and get the support that they need.
Mhm.
So any story coming to mind?
Yeah. Uh, Definitely, if there is a mentorship program, that definitely already helps kind of, create that transition of like, oh, that you're meeting in order to be in a mentorship partnership. But I feel like I've also reached out to other engineers, usually at some social gathering or projects that we've just worked on together, where it usually starts off as a it's just like questions, like, oh, how were you able to do this, or this looks interesting. Can you tell me more about that? It I think it's harder to, or it seemed harder to make it very official. Like, will you be my mentor? I think it kind of puts people on the spot sometimes, and they feel nervous, and then they think of all the time commitment. But definitely, basically everyone is your mentor, right? Like, as long as you are reaching out to that person and asking them questions that they can, you're seeing their success. Just I find it helpful to just ask them, like, oh, how were you able to do this, and what were some struggles, did you ever encounter this type of struggle? And usually they'll give a general response, of their experience, and that will sort of give you some tips as to how to how you might be able to apply those things in your own life or situations.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So, my next question is around goals and failure. And I like to talk about these in combination because I think that it's important to teach young people that they go hand in hand. So, share a little bit about your experience and how important goal setting is to you, and how you have managed moving through and past failures that you've experienced along the way.
um, I Usually during our annual review, we have a, like, do you have any goals for the next year? And usually I was pretty passive about it. I'm pretty happy, kind of moving along. And I think this past year, actually, I realized that I did want to transition into more of a leadership role. And, I kind of stating that out loud to them, they sort of laid out all the different things that they would like to see to sort of be the steps towards management. And I think I have a little bit of regret in terms of not setting that as a goal sooner, or not at least voicing that sooner. Because you know even though even though I wasn't sure if I wanted to be in a management role, I feel like I could have at least heard what the criteria was for management, and then been tracking towards that over time, rather than, you know, being where I am now and sort of being like, oh, I'd like to do that. And then realizing that it'll take this much longer in order to hit that role. So I, I think even if you're not sure what your goals are, um, I I find that it is helpful to just sort of aim for, a just think of an impossible goal, something that you're never really thinking about doing, and just set that out there. And then, you can, I feel like it sets you up for a better trajectory, because then you're already aiming towards that, and then you can make your choice at any point that, oh, I want to do something else, or I want to stay where I'm at, to so I definitely think goal setting, is setting an impossible, or what you think is an impossible goal for yourself, is definitely, um, you know a, a a good thing to aim for.
Yeah, so what I hear and what you're saying too is the notion of, like, even if you don't know if it's what you want, it's good to sort of open up the door to those trajectories sooner, so that you at least start to build skill sets or awareness around those different pathways. Because as we know, careers are not linear. I think when we're kids, we think that they are, but they're not, right? generally maybe somewhat opportunistic of when there's a new opportunity that opens up a new door, we kind of choose those. So Jennifer, you talked a little bit about your experience as a woman in engineering classes. I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on how you have maybe overcome some of the gender stereotypes about women in engineering, and how you did that, and what it feels like when you face those stereotypes?
Um, I think I I don't think it's ever been outright of a stereotype. I think a lot of times, you experience something where you think they might be saying something because you are a woman, but you're never really sure sometimes. I have heard of instances where it's much more blatant, but in my own experience, it hasn't been that direct. But I've also felt that, I've sort of, I play into, I think looking back, I feel like I have played into that stereotype of, sort of being on the side, being more of a support role, rather than kind of pushing for, you know, saying what I want and working towards that. I feel like I've usually let other people take that role in terms of, giving me direction rather than, taking the lead myself. But I feel like over time I've realized that, you know, even with so much experience, that if I never take that lead, that I think it's harder for people to want to give me a lead role, if they never see me exhibiting that. So I think my advice, probably for, younger engineers entering the industry, I feel like you have to, you know, be confident and, show leadership. And it's a scary thing, I think, to basically say what you think and try to take steps in that direction. But I think even if you're trying to lead something and things are getting in the way, I feel like you've already exhibited, a leadership skill, and I think that is valuable to, just the people around you, to see that, in a person. In Yeah. So, for other women, I feel like, you know being a leader, and, if it is about just getting the work done, showing that, that you have a plan and you're, aiming for a direction, I think is definitely helpful and something you should exhibit sooner rather than later. And also exercise. I feel like, if you're so used to being told what to do, it's hard when all of a sudden you're in a role where you're trying to tell other people to do things.
I like that. That's good advice. So my final two questions, and I'll offer them in tandem, is one is, what do you love most about being a civil engineer in a structural engineering environment, building homes for big, beautiful homes for people? And what's the final advice that you'd like to offer, in addition to what you already offered, to people interested in considering a career in engineering, women specifically?
Um, the thing I love most about just engineering in general is the problem solving. I love sort of tinkering with things and, pulling things apart, figuring out how they work, and then trying to, make things work in a better way, whatever that might be. Um, and I think maybe the advice that I would give to other, potential women engineers is, uh, you know, do if engineering is something that you're interested in doing, definitely, you know, don't let other, people tell you that, maybe that's not right for you. I did hear at the very, very beginning, like, oh, you might be the only girl in your class, or, that's not really, what other women do. And and it might be a little lonely. And there was that at the beginning, but actually when I started getting into the industry more, you learn to meet people. And so definitely, like, don't think of being a woman as a barrier. Think of it as just who you are. And then, uh, definitely, reaching out to others to build friendships, build your uh, outreach or your network of people to be with, and it doesn't have to be just engineering. You definitely want to reach out to like architects and contractors, and that definitely builds your network even more. So yeah, and also help people that are coming in after you, to definitely encourage other women to be in the same field as you, so that you won't it won't be so lonely anymore.
I love that. So I know I promised that was my last question, but I just realized there's something I wanted to circle back to. So you said that when you were in high school, that you really loved art and you really loved I think you said math and sciences. And this is often a misconception around engineering, is that art's not welcome in it, right? It's just the STEM. And so could you talk a little bit about how you really saw the merging of those two loves in this field, and so that it might help some other people who feel like, oh, I've got to pick, arts or STEM.
Yeah, actually, I find this pretty common. You know, not men or women. I feel like all of my engineering friends in college and even now, like, we do engineering as a job. We enjoy it, but a lot of us, cross over into doing some of the arts. So, actually, I met a lot of engineers that were musicians at the time. And, I don't think because we like engineering, that shuts us off from doing some of the arts. It's just, um, we're all multifaceted people, and I feel like we can have different interests. So, in terms of the architecture engineering component, I do feel like I was able to find sort of that line where the two can sort of meet. Where I can be surrounded by architecture, but at the same time, kind of take it to that next step of like, you know, these are the numbers behind this building, and then seeing it one day, fully built is, uh, I I appreciate my contribution to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time to share with me today. I really enjoyed hearing your story, and I think it's really beautiful and unique. And I especially like, how you were able to find a way to really integrate your love of art with your love of problem solving. So thank you very much.
Thanks, you're welcome.